everyone, and a big welcome. Today's a special day because we've got Peter and Vicky's vow renewals, which is very special. Welcome to their family and friends here to enjoy them and support it. And welcome to everyone online. Good to have you with us this morning. This morning there's no kids program because our leaders are on holidays, but we'll have a great morning. And don't forget, after church we've got a sausage sizzle and some yummy morning tea. So have a great day. Over to you, Philip.
Hi everyone. Jeff was upset that I'm here and I should be in the middle, but who cares? Seriously. Jeffrey, you right now? Thank you. How about we stand up and sing some great songs to the Lord, shall we? It's called Blessed Be.
Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in a desert place, though I walk through the wilderness. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when the sun is shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering. There's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Oh yeah. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name, please, the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name.
Supposed to do some clapping in there and we forgot. So I think we should do now, all right? Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. That's it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. timing was out there. 1, 2, 3. Bass, piano got it, drums not with it. 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we'll forget that and go on to the next song. Chainbreaker. You've been walking the same old road for miles and miles. If you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies. If you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, well, there's a better life. There's a better life. If you got pain, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom, a saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got pain, he's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out with the same old fight. We've all run to things we know just ain't right. There's a better life, oh yeah, a better life. You got pain, it's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom, a saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain maker. Instrumental. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify, testify. You believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. You got pain, he's a pain taker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom, a saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. If you need freedom, a saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. Oh yeah. Isn't that fantastic? He breaks every chain that we have. I love it. Was there meant to be any clapping in that, Jeff? Okay, well, we won't do any. We have Jeff, the bass player, Jeff, the drummer, and Sarah, okay? Jeff's a musician, Jeff's the drummer. Search me, you know my way.
Thanks, just grab a seat. Big welcome if it's your first time at Redgum. For those online, just so good to have you in the room with us today. I'm really looking forward to Vicky and Peter sharing some of their heart today. And Pete, just relax. It's just, you've got a tie on. You can handle it. You can. It was so good. We've got Joel's dad, Miles, and his mum, Robin, here for the first time, so really fantastic to have you here. I loved it. Joel arrived in bare feet. He's getting ready for Barefoot Sunday, and the first thing his mum does when she greets him this morning is fiddles with his collar to make sure it's right, and the boy's got no shoes on. So I love the priorities of parents. Just for a moment, just humour me for a moment, I'd like everyone just to close your eyes and point to where you think true north is. So just everyone point to where you think true north is. And now open your eyes. Okay. Some of you are very wrong. Some of you are right. And some of you are super confident you're right and you're probably wrong. But I would like to get a volunteer out who actually is confident they are right. And I'm going to test you because I've got a way to sort this out. So who's confident that they're right? Oh, okay. Okay, Miles is going to have a go at this. Now, come over here.
So you see, it's a bit like that Joel's not too far from the tree where it fell
Yeah,
from.
this is worrying me. This is worrying me, right? So, Miles, can you just stand in front of that, just there? Yep. And I want you to point to where you think true north is. Okay. So the arrow on the floor,
Oh, look at that!
you're probably about 10 degrees out. Yep. Okay. So if you start walking right now to true north, by the time you get... No, just grab a seat. I can see Joel. Oh, dear. But you would never get there. You just... You know, you think you know where true north is, but no, right? 50 years ago, when Vicky and Peter stood at St John's Church in Anglican and Lilydale and stood down the front and said their vows to each other, back then, a loaf of bread was worth 23 cents. But that same loaf of bread weighed nearly 2 kilos. Today it's a miserable 65 or 650 grams. And that's not the only thing that's changed in those 50 years. The other day, I saw some wedding photos. You've both changed a little smidgen, just a little bit, right? Because there's not much that remains the same in our world. In 1768, a young lieutenant by the name of James Cook, he sailed from Plymouth Dock in England to this far side of the world. And without a knowledge of where true north is, he would never have navigated his way to New Zealand and then eventually to the east coast of Australia, discovering that first time as Europeans, and then getting back to England again. And one of the tools that he used was a compass. Now, compasses have been around for since the 12th century. But a compass only points you towards magnetic north. And magnetic north, it just keeps changing. Over time, it's hard to say it, magnetic north, it moves. Whereas true south doesn't, because it's a fixed point at the North Pole. And true north. true north. Doesn't change, yes. Now, when I mention the word North Pole, some of you this time of the year are thinking Father Christmas, reindeer. That's not where I'm going, right? And if this is your first time to this building, it's possible that some of you this morning listened to your phone with a very confident woman telling you where to turn and how to get here. I doubt if any of you used a map and a compass, or like Captain Cook, a sextant. I don't think any of you used those sorts of things. Some of you just asked for directions. But up until I started trying to do some preparation for today, I thought that a Polaris was something that you got in, little four-wheel drive buggy that you hooned up and down steep hills in. I didn't know that Polaris is the name of the North Star. And the North Star in the Northern Hemisphere sits smack over top of the North Pole, and it doesn't move. And so for about 1,500 years, people have been able to navigate at night time in the Northern Hemisphere, just finding where the North Star is. Now, when Peter and Vicky got married all those years ago, navigation at sea was still done at night time by the stars. Now, I'm not trying to make you sound old, because you got married in 72, but it wasn't until the late 70s that GPS satellite systems started to be used for the first time. Now, here's the thing. Every navigation system that we use is dependent upon knowledge of where true north is. And we live in a world that is trying to redefine relationships, sexuality, gender, where life starts, where life finishes. In fact, even redefining what makes a great life. See, some people think that life begins at conception. Some people think that life begins at sort of day 8 or week 8 or week 28 or at birth. But God says you're all wrong. I want to read you something. It's out of Jeremiah chapter 1. And this is what God says. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That's before conception. And then he says, before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That's about identity. It's about purpose. And we live in a world at the moment that is struggling. There's a crisis of identity. And before one little egg and one little tadpole collided and began your life, and by the time you'd gone about 6 days, you'd gone from a morula to an expanded blastocyst, and your cells have kept on developing. Before any of that happened, God knew you, had an identity for you, had a purpose for you. And if God created this earth, if he established this magnetic field that we can run a compass by, he also, when creating this magnetic field, it doesn't just run through the centre of the earth. It actually expands and goes into outer space, and it becomes a protective shield over our planet. And what happens is when windstorms from the sun come hurtling at us at 800 kilometres a second, that's fast, right? And these windstorms, it's not just wind, they're carrying these charged protons and neutrons, electrons, and this sort of plasma form. I haven't got a clue what I said. But all I know is they're super hot. If you can imagine a lightning strike, that heat, that's what these windstorms are bringing towards Earth. And when they hit this magnetic field, they follow along the magnetic lines, either going south or north. And when they get there, they create those auroras, those things that are seen at the North and the South Pole. Now, a number of years ago, I was going over to our shearing shed at about 4 o'clock in the morning to check on some goats that were kidding. And as I started walking towards the shearing shed, down to the south was all these yellow and green and pink lights shining up all over the place. It was mesmerising. And I went and got the whole family up and we came and watched this, and it was just incredible watching the southern aurora from our shearing shed landing out at Hillside. And if this complex, this amazing world that turns on its own axis every 23 hours, 54 minutes and 4 seconds, if it's turning like this on this axis, and as it rotates around the sun, while the moon orbits around us, it's actually that all that's going on, our axis, we would wobble into outer space if it wasn't for where the moon is positioned. Now, if this planet really does come from divine planning and construction, and if according to God, we are the purpose that He put all this together, if we are at the centre of all this planning and design and purpose, that makes your one and only life fairly significant, fairly important. But life can get complicated. It can get painful. It can get messy. Relationships can actually break down. And not everyone can look back, like you two, at 50 years and think, we've weathered some storms. There were some rough times, but we've come through. Not everyone can do that. And it was Peter's idea, his initiative of today. And he came to me at the farm and he says, Lex, I'd like to renew our vows on our 50th wedding anniversary. I said, does Vicky know? He goes, no. I said, Pete, you know when you tell her, she's going to cry. And Pete says, she better. See, you could upset her in a good way. I've discovered I have the capacity to upset people in a bad way. And I have this capacity to destroy relationships. I think I could probably destroy every relationship in my life. In fact, as a teenager, I really destroyed my relationship with my dad. Because although Dad loved me, he would try to show his love for me by doing things for me. But I wanted him to show his love by doing things with me. And that difference created this angst in me towards Dad. If you were to ask my wife, Coral, where the greatest pain, the greatest heartache she's ever felt in life has come from, it's come from me, from my self-focus. It's what I've done to her. But when I was about 19 or so, I forgave my dad for not being the dad that I wanted him to be. And that set me free. It set Dad free from my judgment. And Dad became my hero. And I can remember sitting on his bed not long before he died, and he looked at me and said, son, you've turned out trumps. And I was thinking, that's like when it's really cold and miserable and rainy day, and eventually the sun comes out and you go, oh, it's turned out trumps, you know. We started a bit rough, but we got there. And I don't think I caused Coral the same hurt and grief and pain that I have in the earlier days of our marriage. I actually now appreciate the differences between us. But any changes in my life aren't the result of just getting a bit older and wiser. They actually began when I was 16, and I found this true north, not as a geographic location, but as a person in Jesus. And I found him as a personal relationship, not a set of rules. And I know, Vicky, when you're a young girl and you'd go to church with your grandfather, that's where that all began in your heart as well. And I've discovered the value of village life, of being involved in a local church and what that does in your family, for your kids, in all the relationships in your life. In this starting to trust God as true north in my life, I fell in love with my wife when she was 16, I was 17, and by the time I just turned 18, I started asking her to marry me. And I did that for 3 years, but she couldn't give me an answer. Who wouldn't want to marry this boy? But she was worried about, she doesn't like making decisions, especially decisions that are important. And so after 3 years, eventually one day she said to me, Lex, I'm going to ask God. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask God to change 3 things in your life in the next 2 weeks. Now, I didn't know what they were. And that put me in a really bad place because I wanted to marry this girl whether God was in it or not, right? But she was convinced that she needed God to be the true north to know, is this the boy to marry? And they were really big ticket items, but I did not know what they were. And so when some of these things started happening in my life and changes happening, I didn't tell Coral because I didn't know that they were the things. So I told my mum. And each time Coral was having lunch at our house and she overheard me telling my mum these changes that were happening in my life in this 2-week period. And I'll never forget, we're driving down the hill out of Bairnsdale towards Wyong in the ute, and she looked at me, she says, the answer's yes. And I just about drove off the road. It was just, woo, and we were married 6 months later. God has this incredible capacity to be big and small at the same time. And 2,700 years ago, before science could really show us and help us understand our earth and our planet, the prophet Isaiah wrote these words in Isaiah chapter 40. He said this. He's talking about God. He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. And that word, the Hebrew word that's translated into English that says circle, it comes from a root word that means to describe a circle, to draw a round sphere, completely round. And that's how, 2,700 years ago, our world was being described, how God was describing this world he built. And medieval Christian monks in the Middle Ages, they actually believed the world was round and not flat because of the way God described what he made. And 3 other places in the Bible is the same word used to describe a round world and not a flat world. But the Bible's this progressive revelation of God, and it begins as God as this creator, and then it changes into this God who is a personal, true north for our life, who will guide us if we'll trust him. And one of Jesus' closest friends, Peter, he wrote this, and it's very personal. And he says this, you can throw the whole weight of your anxiety upon him, for you are his personal concern. That's not planet Earth, that's you as an individual on planet Earth. And Peter knew that firsthand. He'd experienced that from Jesus firsthand. And that's where he could write this, with the authority of what he'd experienced. You can throw the whole weight of your anxiety upon him, for you are his personal concern. And mental health issues have become more talked about, haven't they? But they're not new. They've been around since Peter wrote that. In fact, he was writing that to the early church, the early Christians, and I think they had a bit of cause for some anxiety because they could be dragged out of their homes from a workplace and fed to the lions to sort of entertain the crowds at lunchtime at the cricket. Like it was a very, very dangerous place to be in Roman times and be a Christian. And as fear increases, the desire to be in control just goes through the roof. And when I was trying to win Coral into my little heart, I did things like I went out with her mum. She didn't have a dad. Her dad had died when she was 9. So I would go out with her mum and Coral, and we would do things together in families. And one day we were visiting Coral's uncle's farm, and I'm driving her mum's car. And it's fairly flat on the river flats out Woodglen Way, but there was a bit that just dropped down like this. And there was a track, but there was a track that went around it too. And she's sitting in the back seat. And she says to me, "Lex, don't go down there." It looked like the best place to go, didn't it? It was quicker. So I just started to drive down there. As I started to drive down this little hill, she just whacked me on the back from the side of the head, from behind. It scared me terribly. I was traumatised, still traumatised. But as her fear level went up, her desire to control went through the roof, and she just went whack. Now, it is normal when we feel anxious to want to be in control. It's counterintuitive to trust a God you can't see with the things that we are worried about. But honestly, in my life, I found you can. And when we started a church in Sydney, we'd just started, and I can't explain why, but I went completely deaf in this ear. And I don't know if you've ever had hearing troubles, but if you're completely deaf in one ear and you're in a crowd, everything's echoing and bouncing around, and it's awful. And you have to walk beside, you can't walk on this side of someone, you've got to put yourself on the other side to walk along. And so I said to God, if you want me to lead this church, then I've got to be able to hear. I can't do it completely deaf. And I went to specialists, and they told me about putting grommets in my ear. And they said, your ear canals are too thin and narrow, and it mightn't work, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And I just said, well, God, if you're really calling me to lead this church, then you're going to have to restore my hearing. But 6 months went past and nothing changed. And it was about a year, and I was driving to Coral to work one day, and she's talking and we're talking, and suddenly I realised that I could hear. And my hearing was completely restored, and it stayed that way ever since, until you fired that big gun in my ear. And it's not industrial deafness a bit now, but it's like God cares about the little details. That was God caring about the smallness of my hearing, and yet God is this massive, big God all at the same time. And he's got this capacity to be personally concerned about you. Next time you hear the words, "You've arrived at your destination." I can't do accents. But whenever Siri or Google Maps, whenever you hear those words, "You've arrived at your destination," just remember it's true north that was relied upon to get you there. And you can't see it. But without it, we'd be literally lost, because we wouldn't have a reference point. And when God placed 100 billion stars into this galaxy we call the Milky Way, he had a plan. And when he started this Earth that we're standing on, spinning on its axis annually around the sun, he had a plan. And when he established ecosystems that could support us, human life, he had a plan. And that plan centres around you and I. And God didn't put us on earth to one day populate heaven. He put us on earth so that there could be human beings that could experience the culture of heaven on earth. And he dreamed you into existence, and he knew you before you were born. And every mental health issue, every emotional, spiritual, physical condition that we struggle with, God wants to be there, helping us through all that. He's relationally wanting to be connected to us. And it sounds crazy, but he wants to do it through a little village, a local church, where flawed human beings can actually show love and acceptance to each other. It's amazing. And I know that today you started this idea, Pete. But I know that Vicky is enthusiastic about it, but also know that, Vicky, you're excited to show off your little village today, your little local church, because you found love and acceptance here. And that's a very precious thing for any of us. And I just would love you to experience and know what it's like to belong, to connect to the God that made you, that is the only true north we can trust, and to experience what I've got to experience in life. My dad was really, really sick. We thought he was going to die. I was headed to America for 2 weeks and I thought I'd never see him again. And so I said to him just before I left, Dad, if this is the last conversation we ever had, what would you want to say to me? Because this is what I want to say to you. So I said what I thought was my last farewell to Dad. And then Dad said to me what he thought he would say to me the last time we'd speak. And he said, son, whatever you do, put God first in everything. Put him as your true north. And then when things go bad, and they will, and when things go good, and they will, he can work all of that to your benefit. And he's paraphrasing a verse out of Romans, but that's the essence of how God works in even the bad, the tough, the ugly stuff, and the good stuff. If we can see him as true north, follow him, he'll get us through. He'll get us there. It's up to you guys now. So what we're going to do is, do you want to take your little positions? I think Pete's going to walk down one side, and if we can get Philip up here on keys. This has all been very carefully choreographed. See, Peter's going to be in position first. Does this remind you of 50 years ago, Pete, when you're waiting at the church? Yeah. So I assume, Pete, that's a grandson beside you? Fantastic.
There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. And I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you.
A lot of emotion because there's a lot of love and appreciation for each other, hey? And not many people get to do this. Not everyone gets to live as long on earth and spend 50 years with someone you love like this. And I think, Peter, is he going first? Is he, or you're going first? Okay. So, Vicky, what would you like to say to this man who 50 years ago you said your vows to?
Before we do that, I've got a fan club and they'd like to do something.
Is this Bay 13? We called them Bay 13 at the start. Well done.
Well, from my heart, I've been warming it up. And I don't have my reading glasses on, so I thank God for every day that you've been in my life and for the many special memories that we've made together. You are my rock and my cornerstone. You are my best friend, my confidant, and my best critic when I've asked for it. You are the father of my precious children, Mark, Claire, John and Ian. And Poppy to our grandies, Maddie, Ryan, Paige, Emma, Tamika and Sophie. And I could ask for no more, and I am so blessed.
I actually wrote some out. Look at that. It says vows. 50 years ago, I made you a promise to love and cherish you. Over those years, we have worked together through good times and bad times, happy and sad times. We have laughed together and cried together, but always together. You have always been my best friend and always will be. And so, with our children, grandchildren, and our friends as witnesses, I renew my promise to love and cherish you always.
That's pretty special, isn't it? Hey? And Vicky's asked if I'd pray a blessing over you both. And when we were talking about today, earlier in the week, I said to them, what is it that has attracted you to each other? And it said, well, we're best friends. Yeah. But there's a much deeperness. It's not just friendship, this is love. And it's a very beautiful and special thing. And so I'm just going to pray for you both, hey? Lord, I thank you for Vicky. I thank you for Peter. I thank you for all the things that have happened in the last 50 years, the good and the bad. And that you can work all of that together for our good if we can just trust you. And I know that that's been Vicky's heart from the beginning, to trust you in all this journey of life. And Lord, I thank you for Peter's support with her. I thank you that today is his idea. He initiated this. And I speak your amazing blessing. This huge God that can put a universe together and yet can care about our personal world, our personal life. I thank you for how big you are, how small you are, and I pray your strength upon Peter and Vicky in the years ahead, in the challenges ahead, in the good times and the bad times, Lord. That they would both know you as true north, that they would know your strength and support at every twist and turn along the way. I thank you for the family that has come out of the fruitfulness of this relationship. I thank you for the individual lives here today, children, grandchildren, friends, Lord, I thank you. Speak your blessing over them. Yeah. You may kiss the bride, you can. Yep, beautiful. So we've got some little slides we're going to show up there of you guys. So do you want to grab a seat and you can keep singing, thanks.
There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. And I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you. mercy flows like a river wide. Your healing comes from your hands. And suffering children are safe in your arms. And there is none like you. There is none like you. No one else can touch my heart like you do. I could search for all eternity long and find there is none like you.
That was a decent tune, eh? Wow. Got a decent girl, though, too. Yeah, fantastic. Just give him a clap. Yeah. We love you, Vicky. When Vicky walked into Redgum for the first time, she says, I'm going to come to church, but my husband, he doesn't come to church. Well, it was his idea to be here today. And I think it's pretty special. Yeah. And it's not your first time, and it won't be your last time, will it, Pete, eh? We'll keep working on you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. We just got some morning tea. There's some sausages cooked out there, so just hang around. And if you're from round Bairnsdale, come back next week. And let's just really keep establishing this village life here. We're just an early church. We've only been going a bit over 3 years, but it's just wonderful having you here this morning. Fantastic.